You make $75,000 a year. You're in the top 25% of earners in this country. You've got a master's degree, a job with benefits, a retirement account that gets automatically deducted from your paycheck. On paper, you're doing everything right. And yet, every single month, you're Googling how to make an extra $1,000 fast at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday while eating cereal for dinner because you forgot to buy groceries. Again. And here's the really messed up part. You genuinely have no idea where your money goes. My name is Maya, and I spend way too much time thinking about why intelligent, educated, financially responsible women somehow end up feeling broke despite earning good salaries. If you're someone who's ever looked at your bank account 2 weeks after payday and thought, there's no possible way I spent all of that, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up because we're about to dig into one of the most frustrating financial phenomena that nobody wants to talk about. Now, look, I want to be really clear about something right from the start. This isn't about blaming women for being bad with money. That narrative is tired, it's inaccurate, and frankly, it's lazy thinking. What we're actually dealing with here is a perfect storm of psychological biases, social expectations, and structural economic realities that create this weird situation where you can be smart, educated, earning well, and still feel like you're constantly one emergency away from financial disaster. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Feeling poor isn't actually about how much money you make. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you think you should be able to afford. And for women especially, that gap is being widened by forces that most financial advice completely ignores. Let's start with what I call the invisible tax. And I'm not talking about actual taxes, although we'll get to those. I'm talking about the thousand tiny financial decisions that women are socially expected to make that men largely opt out of, and how those decisions compound into massive amounts of money over time. Here's a real example. Sarah makes $82,000 a year as a marketing manager. She considers herself financially responsible. But when we actually sat down and tracked her spending for 3 months, we found something shocking. She was spending almost $900 a month on what I call social maintenance expenses. Now, you might be thinking, $900? What does that even mean? Okay, let's break it down. Hair coloring and cuts every 6 weeks, $180. Skincare products, because God forbid she shows up to client meetings with visible acne at 34, $70. Professional clothing that actually fits properly, averaging $200 a month. Nails done because she shakes hands with executives, $60. Makeup that doesn't look cakey under fluorescent office lighting, $40 monthly. Dry cleaning, $50. Emergency Uber rides when she's running late because she spent 40 minutes trying to make her hair look professional, $80. That's $900 right there. They're basically required if you want to be taken seriously in most professional environments. And before anyone jumps into the comments saying, well, just don't do those things, let me hit you with some research. A study from the University of Chicago found that women who wore makeup to job interviews were rated as more competent, likable, and trustworthy than identical women without makeup. Another study showed that women who don't meet conventional grooming standards earn up to 6% less. 6% of $82,000 is almost $5,000 a year. A woman is making a calculated investment in her earning potential. The average woman spends over $3,000 a year just on beauty products and services. That's $3,000 that could be going into investments, emergency funds, or debt payoff. But instead, it's going into meeting baseline social expectations that men largely don't face. The invisible tax is just the beginning. There's also what economists call invisible labor, and it has massive financial implications that almost nobody accounts for. Women do an average of 4.5 hours more unpaid labor per day than men. That's housework, childcare, emotional labor, family coordination. 4.5 hours a day adds up to almost 32 hours a week. That's a whole extra job that women are working for free. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what does that have to do with feeling poor? Everything. Because that invisible labor has a direct opportunity cost. Those are hours that could be spent on a side hustle, on professional development, on networking, on negotiating for a raise. But instead, They're spent remembering to buy birthday presents for your partner's family, scheduling doctor's appointments, meal planning, organizing the household calendar. Let me give you a concrete example. Jennifer earns $90,000 a year as a software engineer. Her male colleague makes 95,000. She's annoyed by the pay gap, but she figures $5,000 isn't worth making a big fuss about. But here's what's actually happening. Jennifer spends an average of 12 hours a week on household management tasks. Her colleague spends maybe 3. That's 9 hours a week of differential invisible labor. If Jennifer were billing those hours at her effective hourly rate of about $43 an hour, that's $387 worth of labor she's performing for free every single week. Multiply that by 52 weeks, and Jennifer is doing over $20,000 worth of unpaid labor annually. So the actual gap isn't $5,000 in salary, it's $25,000 in total economic value, and nobody's tracking it. Nobody's telling Jennifer that the reason she feels poor despite her good salary is because she's basically working 1.5 jobs, but only getting paid for one. Now look, it gets even more complicated when you factor in what I call the comparison trap. And this is where social media has absolutely destroyed women's ability to feel financially secure. Here's the thing. Humans are terrible at absolute assessments. We're really good at relative assessments. You don't look at your salary and think, is this enough money to live on? You look at your salary and then, okay, is this as much as my peers are making? And that second question is way more dangerous. A study from the American Psychological Association found that women are significantly more likely than men to compare their financial status to others. And they're also significantly more likely to feel inadequate about money as a result. Let me paint you a picture. You're scrolling Instagram. Your college friend just posted pictures from her vacation in Greece. Your coworker posted about the new couch she got. Your cousin is showing off her engagement ring. And you're sitting there thinking, why does everyone else have their life together except me? But here's what you don't see. Your college friend put that Greece trip on a credit card at 18% interest. Your coworker got that couch with buy now, pay later and is stressed about the payments. Your cousin's fiance went into debt for that ring. Nobody posts their credit card statements. Nobody posts their anxiety about money. They post the highlight reel, and you're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's show reel. And this creates this toxic cycle where you feel poor relative to your peers, so you spend money trying to keep up, which actually makes you poorer. This is where it gets really interesting, because smart women often fall into what I call the optimization trap. This looks like financial responsibility, but it's actually costing you money. Here's what I mean. You spend 3 hours researching to save $20 on a purchase. You drive to 4 different grocery stores to take advantage of sales. You spend a Saturday organizing your budget spreadsheet with color-coded categories. You spend an hour on the phone with your credit card company to get a $50 annual fee waived. All of this feels like good financial management. But here's the problem. You're optimizing the wrong things. You're spending enormous amounts of time and mental energy in saving small expenses while completely ignoring the big stuff that actually moves the needle. Here's the math. If you make $75,000 a year and work a standard 40-hour week, your time is worth roughly $36 an hour. If you spend 2 hours trying to save $20, you've actually lost money. You could have spent those 2 hours working on a freelance project, learning a high-value skill, or literally preserving your mental energy for important financial decisions. You need to learn how to increase your income, not how to save on small expenses. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but I'm still making a good salary. Where is all the money actually going? The definition of a good salary has become completely different from financial reality. In 1970, the median home cost about 2.5 times the median income. Today, it's more than 5 times the median income. Since 1990s, childcare costs have increased by 214%, healthcare costs have increased by 347%, and college tuition has increased by 182%. Meanwhile, wages have increased by 25% when you adjust for inflation. So when someone says you're making a good salary at $75,000, they're using a reference point from an economy that no longer exists. And this is particularly brutal for women because women are more likely to be supporting others financially. They're more likely to be sending money to aging parents, to kids, to partner. All of those responsibilities create financial obligations that eat into that supposedly good salary. Now look, I've spent this entire video explaining why you feel poor, but that doesn't actually help you unless we talk about solutions. And the solutions are not what most personal finance advice will tell you. The conventional advice is always budget better. Cut your latte. Stop buying avocado toast. And sure, fine, those things might save you a few $100s a year, but they don't address the structural issues we've been talking about. Here's what actually works. You need to shift from optimization thinking to leverage thinking. Optimization thinking says, how do I reduce my expenses by 5%? Leverage thinking says, how do I increase my income by 50%? Optimization thinking says, how do I save money on groceries? Leverage thinking says, how do I develop a high skill? Here's a concrete example. Instead of spending 3 hours clipping coupons to save $30, spend 3 hours learning how to negotiate salary. The average salary negotiation results in a 7% increase. On a $75,000 salary, that's $5,200 per year, every year, for the rest of your career at that company. Or here's another one. Instead of driving across town to save $5 on groceries, use that time to update your LinkedIn profile and reach out to 3 people in your industry. One of those conversations might lead to a job opportunity that pays $20,000 more. Now you understand what is more important to do. The math is very clear. Your time is better spent on activities that increase your earning potential than on activities that decrease your spending by tiny amounts. But here's the thing that nobody wants to hear. Some of the invisible tax and invisible labor might just be the cost of existing in the world as a woman right now. That's not fair, but it's reality. The goal isn't to eliminate every expense that men don't face. It's to make conscious decisions about which ones are actually worth it. Maybe professional hair color genuinely advances your career and the return on investment is there. Fine, budget for it. But don't also feel obligated to get your nails done every 2 weeks if that's not moving the needle. The question isn't, can I afford this? The question is this expense generating enough value, either in income potential, time savings, or genuine happiness? To justify the cost, you need to be making that decision consciously, not just doing things because you feel like you're supposed to. So here's what you actually do. First, track every dollar you spend for 1 month. Not to judge yourself, just to see where the money actually goes. You cannot manage what you don't measure. Second, categorize your expenses into 3 buckets: necessity, investment, and lifestyle. Necessity is stuff you genuinely need to survive. Investment is stuff that will increase your earning potential or save you time. Lifestyle is everything else. Most people are shocked to discover how much is in that third bucket. Third, calculate your hourly rate and use it as a filter for decisions. If something costs you 3 hours of work, is it worth 3 hours of your life? If a savings task saves you $15 an hour and your main job pays $40 an hour, you're actually losing money by spending time on savings instead of investing that time in advancing your main career. Fourth, negotiate your salary. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes you. The single biggest factor in whether you'll feel financially secure is how much money you're earning. Everything else is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Learn to negotiate. Practice it. Get comfortable with it. The return on investment is enormous. Fifth, automate your savings and investments before you see the money. Set up automatic transfers to your savings account and retirement accounts on the same day you get paid. Pay yourself first, not last. And sixth, you might need to accept that you can't have everything right now. You might need to choose between the nice apartment and the frequent travel, between the new car and the designer clothes. These aren't moral judgments, they're just math. Look, here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not bad with money. You're not irresponsible. You're not failing at adulting. You're navigating an economic system that has become significantly harder for your generation, while also dealing with gendered expectations and invisible labor that nobody wants to acknowledge. But understanding why the system is rigged doesn't mean you give up. It means you stop blaming yourself for structural problems and you start making strategic decisions about where to focus your time and energy. You can't fix the gender pay gap by yourself. You can't fix the cost of housing by yourself. but you can decide which battles are worth fighting in your own financial life. You can decide to invest your time in high leverage activities. You can decide to negotiate for what you're worth. You can decide to build wealth slowly instead of trying to keep up with everyone else's highlight reel. Smart women don't feel poor because they're bad with money. They feel poor because they're fighting an uphill battle while carrying invisible weight. But once you see that clearly, you can make different choices, better choices, choices that might actually move the needle. So stop Googling how to make an extra $1,000 fast at 11 p.m. Start Googling how to negotiate a $20,000 raise. The return on investment is significantly better. If this video helped you see your financial situation differently, subscribe for more content that actually addresses the real issues. And give it a thumbs up so more people can find it. Now, go look at your budget, figure out what you're optimizing that doesn't matter, and start investing that energy in something that will actually change your financial future. You've got this.